up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly with John Marks on PHLY on a Victory Monday. And this really feels like a Victory Monday. That was, I don't even know the last time. I would have to go back and look, where you could just get to the fourth quarter, put those feet up, and enjoy, and not even concentrate on the rest of the Eagles game, maybe switch over to red zone. I was at a party yesterday with a bunch of people, so by the fourth quarter, I was doing a lot of yapping, a lot of less paying attention to the game, and I needed that. I think fans needed that. That was a dominating performance by the Eagles, both defensively, which we'll talk about coming up in a second, and offensively, where you didn't need Jalen Hurts to throw the ball 40 times. Very efficient performance by Jalen Hurts. If you don't need to throw it, then you don't need to throw it. Yesterday, they did need to throw it. Let's start off with Saquon Barkley. Later on, after we talk about the game, we talk about the offense, talk about the defense, we get a recap of what happened over the weekend and last night. I want to actually try to figure out if Saquon Barkley's jersey is burnable if you're a New York Giant fan. Because I honestly don't. I was trying to understand the mentality of a Giant fan to boo and burn his jersey yesterday at the game. But let's not start there. Let's start with Saquon Barkley, who Tyler's been saying it almost every week here. I think most Eagles fans have been saying it. Between A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley, you have two of the best weapons in all of football. Saquon Barkley has been better than advertised, and we thought we were getting one of the top backs in football. And with apologies to Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley's the best running back in football, and you saw that yesterday. 17 for 176, runs of 38, 41, and 55 yards. Saquon Barkley himself outgained the Giants by over 60 yards, 68 yards in total. And not only is he a great player, and he showed that yesterday, he was running 22 miles an hour at one point, his top speed, which is, I think, the second best of the year of any running back. But outside of how great of a player he is, I was really, really impressed with the way he handled himself professionally this week. Going back to New York, a lot of emotions. Fans are upset. Media asking a lot of questions. Right? This is a really, really stressful week for a player, for Saquon Barkley. And he went up there and he handled it like a pro leading into it. He got on the field, had an amazing game, best game as an Eagle. And then after the game, he seemed more relieved that it was over than anything. He wasn't dancing on the Giants' grave. He wasn't rubbing it in. Oh, you could have signed me and you didn't. And sometimes you don't have to say it and you still feel it. And I'm sure yesterday felt really good to Saquon Barkley, but it didn't feel like he wasn't up there with a smug look or a smug attitude. He just was happy the game was over and he had a great game. He saw his teammates after the game. I saw pictures of him speaking just with staff and training staff and operational people at the stadium. He was a Giant for 6 years, and if it was up to Saquon, he would have been signed long-term, and he'd still be a Giant, and he would still probably be losing a lot of games because the Giants aren't a good team. But Saquon Barkley really, for everything that you wanted from a player, both what he's doing on the field and how he's handling himself off the field as a total pro, God, you got to be impressed by him. And remember, he dropped the ball that would have given him the win, and we don't talk about that. That hasn't been dwelled on. He handled it perfectly. That was him. He knows it was him. He handled it like it was him, and he bounced back, and he has been amazing. He has the most rushing yards through 6 games of any Eagle. I wish I had the stat in front of me. I don't know if it's ever, but it's certainly in a really, really long time. He has been tremendous, and I can't say enough. And, I'll admit when I'm wrong, like I picked the Giants to win the game on Sunday, and sometimes I'll give myself a pat in the back when I'm correct. When the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley, I was astonished at the national reaction to the Eagles more or less giving Saquon Barkley a 2-year contract, a 2-year guaranteed contract, to where if it was a disaster, it didn't work out, they could zip him and be out of it after 2 years. I was amazed at not the negativity, but just the lack of awareness of what a back like Saquon Barkley can do for a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if this was a team that wasn't trying to be a contender or wasn't a contender or wasn't ready to win right now, I don't know if signing Saquon Barkley would have been the best move for that team. You can actually make the argument that the Giants, although they probably should have signed him before, is Saquon Barkley the difference between being a Super Bowl contender or being what they are right now? I think Saquon Barkley does a whole heck of a lot for a team like the Giants. But for the Eagles, a team that really needs to lean on the run more than maybe some of these other prolific passing teams, the Eagles are at their best when they can run the football, when they can play off the run, when you're not overly reliant on Jalen having to bail you out of everything, throwing the ball, running the ball, and everything else. You're supposed to have this great offensive line. Then get a running back and use them. And that's what they're doing with Saquon Barkley. Miles Sanders was good. Swift was good last year. They are not Saquon Barkley. This dude is unbelievable. So everything that you could have expected from Saquon Barkley when you signed him, he's been better than advertised. This has been better than I thought Saquon Barkley was going to be. And you cross your fingers he can stay healthy. You cross your fingers that you don't have to worry about some tweaks or some injuries or things like that. But so far, so great with Saquon Barkley. He has been amazing. And also, hat tip to the offensive game plan. They didn't outsmart themselves. Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni, they didn't say, hey, well, we want to throw the ball and we want to do this and we want to do that. We have A.J. Brown. We have DeMonte Smith. No, they ran right at the Giants. They neutralized that pass rush, even though they still got to Jalen a little bit yesterday. But they didn't outsmart themselves. And they said, we're going to run the ball and we're going to run the ball effectively. And that's what we're going to do. And you could see the mentality going into the game. Everybody had bought into that. And man, Saquon Barkley was unbelievable. So, man, like just that was one of the easier games I can remember in a really, really long time for this Eagles team. All right, we'll get to the headlines in a second. Let's talk about the defense. Tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. And their young core all of a sudden is looking really, really good. Jalen Carter, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss. They had 8 sacks in total. How about Nakobe Dean? Easily his best game as a pro. 11 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, 4 quarterback hits. I felt like I was seeing his jersey flashing the entire, at least first 3 quarters of the game. He seemed like he was in on everything. How about Nolan Smith? And I'll tell you that I'm as guilty as anybody is saying this. I thought he had bust potential written all over him the first couple games of the season. Now you're starting to see him. Now he's starting to make plays. 2nd straight week with a sack. Bryce Huff, number 0, who was giving you 0. How about a sack? He's on the stat sheet. Half a sack last week. He had a sack this week. Josh Sweat has sacks in 3 straight games. 13 sacks the last 2 games. They're bad offenses. No question about it. And that should be mentioned. Browns, terrible offense. Giants, terrible offense. They dominated them. They didn't let them stay in the game for the most part. The game was over. The Giants had no chance yesterday. 2nd straight week of not allowing an offensive touchdown by the Eagles. That hadn't been done it's only been done 1 time in the last 20 years. Not allowing an offensive touchdown in 2 consecutive games. They're playing fast. They're playing confident. They're also not missing tackles like they were a couple weeks ago. Remember how they were bouncing off of contact and tackles? Well, you haven't seen that really at all the last few weeks. So that was it was a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting a great offensive performance by the Giants. I wasn't expecting them to get thoroughly dominated. And they were dominated. Andrew Thomas, their best offensive lineman, their left tackle was out. And I expected the Eagles to try to capitalize on that. And the rest of the Giants line isn't very good. They flat out dominated them. Run game, 117 total yards for the Giants. Daniel Jones was riding the pine, or at least standing up on the sidelines in the 4th quarter, early in the 4th quarter. So that game was done early. And by the way, I got to give Nick Sirianni a shout out. He took a lot of crap in the last week. And I would say, based on the way he handled himself and what happened at that press conference afterwards, that he deserved a lot of that. But his team showed up and played hard, And it was a dominant win. It was a clean win. Now let's see what they do going forward, because unfortunately, you're not going to be able to face the Giants every week, and you're not going to be able to face the Browns every week. Schedule is going to get tougher starting next Sunday in Cincinnati against the Bengals. But I am extremely happy across the board. Offense, defense, coaching, game plan, offensive coaching, defensive coaching. This was a flat out across the board great game by the Eagles in all phases. So if you're an Eagle fan today, maybe you're going to complain that Jalen didn't see Saquon open for a touchdown on that one drive. Maybe you have Saquon on your fantasy football team. I get it. But yeah, it was a great game. It was a fun game, and I was able to take the pressure and the stress off in the fourth quarter and just kind of enjoy the rest of my Sunday afternoon as we welcome in Tyler Zuley, who will bring us headlines coming up in a second. But fun game to watch. I felt really good for Saquon because you can tell he's a good dude.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Has been, I had the chance to cover him a little bit at Penn State, from the time he was a kid. We kind of were similar ages, right? We kind of grew up together at the Penn State, capacity. It always has been a really, really, really good guy. Shows a lot of class. It was one of those things where I was like, I'm sitting watching the draft, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan, but in Harry Potter, he sits down with the hat and he goes, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. I'm sitting there, I'm like, not the Giants. And of course, they take him. But a tremendous game by Saquon Barkley. Really cool homecoming opportunity for him. Homecoming, maybe not the right word, but it's what we used in the headline, so we might as well say it. You brought up everything that I wanted to touch on today. You encompassed in your opening monologue there, except for one player. And I want to give this guy his flowers because he was awesome again. We've talked plenty about him since they drafted him. But Quinyon Mitchell was great again yesterday. He shadowed Malik Neighbors a little bit. He didn't play him the whole game, but he was with Malik Neighbors, who, by the way, is a stud in his own right already in the NFL. But yesterday, Quinyon Mitchell got targeted 4 times. He gave up 2 catches. He only allowed 15 yards, and there was a 59 passer rating allowed on the throws that went his way in the 4 targets that went his way. There was an excitement, a palpable excitement in the air when the Eagles finally said, we're taking a corner in the first round, something that hasn't happened in a very, very long time. We're going to invest in the defensive backs by taking him in the first, Cooper DeJean in the second, and we're going to invest in the secondary. Quinyon Mitchell already looks the part. DeJean's coming along. He really has come along. He's had some really nice moments. Quinyon Mitchell looks to be a legit lockdown, guard your number 1 wide receiver type of corner 6 games into the season.
He's a stud. And you love his mentality, too. Love his mentality. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Sometimes the Eagles feel like they outsmart themselves, right? Like when the obvious pick or the obvious need is right there. They're like, oh, no, we don't draft corners in the first round. We take defensive linemen and offensive linemen, right? Nope. It was an obvious need, and they took him. And you're right, Tyler. He's been fantastic. He's been fantastic. I can't think, even a player you would expect some growing pains with. What's the Quinyon Mitchell play where you're like, oh, well, he is a rookie. We got to remember that.
I think the argument that a lot of people may have had was they get in. People fall into this fallacy, and it comes true at times, but good players, you can find good players wherever you find good players. It's the Toledo thing. It's the Mac thing. That's where people go, well, let's see what he can do against NFL players. Listen, at some point you watch the guy on the tape and you go, this kid's legit. I don't care if I understand he's the best player on the field and he's lining up against receivers from Ball State and Western Michigan and Central Michigan. But like, he's so definitively the best player on the field. It has to translate to the NFL in some capacity. And it clearly has. Through the first 6 games. I'll be honest with you. I think, the draft board fell really, really well for the Eagles when it came to drafting him. They were going to take a corner. I think that they probably had a Nate Wiggins in their sightlines too. The Ravens ended up taking him. I think right after Mitchell went, it was Terrion Arnold went a couple of picks later. There were a couple of corners that they could have lined up and taken. I think they got the best one on draft night. And I think as of right now, he's been as advertised.
Well, and I saw a lot of people saying they should have taken Arnold because what do you do? Why are you taking a player from Toledo, right? Or like I think they got the right player. So we complain when they draft the wrong player, and I guess it kind of with him it hasn't changed week to week. But some weeks Jalen Carter looks like he's the best defensive player we've seen in a long time, and then he kind of disappears. But man, the young players look good yesterday. All right, well let's get to some headlines here. As, man, we had so much going on here yesterday and over the weekend. Headlines with Tyler Zulli. Tyler, what do you got this morning?
Yeah, let's get to a lot that happened over the weekend. But before we do that, of course, I want to tell you that our headlines are brought to you by our friends over at the Glatt Hair Restoration, because bald is now optional. And if you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. They're going to help you regain your confidence, and all you have to do is visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started. Let's start with what is now the World Series, as the LA Dodgers punched their ticket to the World Series. They beat the New York Mets yesterday 10-5 and secure a World Series berth for the first time in a whopping 4 years, John, as the Dodgers beat the Mets in 6 games, and they clinched the NL pennant for the second time in 4 years. It was a bullpen game for the Dodgers, who ended up throwing 7 different pitchers in this one, none of which went more than 2 innings. It was Blake Trinan at the end of the game who went 2, but Michael Kopech started the game. They threw Ben Kasparias, Anthony Banda, Ryan Brazier, Evan Phillips. It was a true bullpen game for Dave Roberts' staff. And with them being able to kind of break things open a little bit in the third inning, it was 6-1 after 3. It kind of gave them a little bit of a flexibility to use guys in a way that they wanted to, instead of having to press to worry about a Game 7. Sean Manaea looked human for probably the first time in this postseason. He only ended up going 2 innings. He gave up 5. They threw the gamut out, but it was Kodai Senga who actually gave up a bulk of the runs out of the bullpen. He went an inning and 2/3, gave up 3 runs, and the Dodgers advanced to the World Series with a 10-5 win over the Mets.
Yeah, it's kind of what you expected. 6 games. Mets fought. Very successful season, something to build upon for next year. Dodgers offense right now is cooking. Right? Like, for anybody out there that was thinking, and I saw a bunch of this, she's like, oh my God, if we would have just gotten past the Mets, so you might have gotten swept if you would have just gotten past the Mets. So the 2 best teams that are in the World Series, I think it's pretty clear that the 2 best teams are in the World Series, Tyler.
Yeah, so as you made mention, it's going to be the Yankees in the American League. They clinched with a 4-1 series win and a 5-2 Game 5 win over the Cleveland Guardians. Another exciting game that was 2-2 heading into the 10th. Juan Soto hit a go-ahead 3-run home run to dead center field and probably just added about $50 million to the money that he's going to make with one swing of the bat in the offseason. But the Yankees are heading to the World Series for the first. Now, how about this? The Yankees, for the first time since 2009, it'll be 15 years since the New York Yankees have made the World Series. So I did some deep diving. Well, not really deep diving. Wikipedia is pretty readily available. This is the 12th time that the Dodgers and the Yankees will meet up in the World Series. It's the first time since 1981 when the Dodgers beat the Yankees 4-2. The Yankees are 9-3 all-time against the Dodgers in the World Series. The Yankees won the first 5. They won 5 over the span of 12 years against the Dodgers, 41, 47, 49, 52, and 53. The Dodgers beat them in 55 and 63, and, of course, in 81. The Yankees won 3 others in that span. They are 9-3 against the Dodgers all-time in the World Series.
Yeah, the 81 World Series, there was a strike that shortened the season, and that was Fernando Valenzuela's rookie season, where he might have been like 35 years old, because no one ever believed that Fernando was his actual age. But yeah, that was this is Major League Baseball must be peachy right now, because they got the matchup they wanted.
Oh yeah,
Yankees and the Dodgers.
LA, New York.
It has mass appeal. It has national appeal. Yep. The playoffs in general have been great so far. So this is going to be a really good World Series.
And on top of the fact that it's geographically it's got appeal, because LA, large city, big following. New York, big city, big following. If I asked you to name the 5 biggest superstars in Major League Baseball, at least 2 of them are in this series. At least.
Shohei and Judge are sure. Absolutely.
And you could make an argument for a Betts. You could make an argument for Soto. You might have 3 or 4 of the biggest names in baseball currently playing in this World Series. It's going to be, the ratings I think are going to go through the roof, especially for Game 1.
Absolutely.
Let's get to a couple other things real quick. Locally, the Flyers lose their home opener on Saturday 3-0 to the Vancouver Canucks. They fall to 1-3-1. Sam Harrison was pretty good in this one. Got peppered quite a bit, ended up stopping 29 of 32 shots. Did give up 3 goals. He was really the only guy who showed up, though. Probably could have been even a little bit more lopsided if Harrison wasn't as good as he was. The Flyers just looked kind of lifeless in this one. The Canucks win 3-0. Flyers drop to 1-3-1 on the regular season. Haven't won a game since their opening night shootout win over these Vancouver Canucks.
All right, so I was trying on Saturday night. There was a lot of college football, and I watched so much football this weekend.
A lot of really good college football.
Yeah, it was a good day on Saturday. So I was excited. I saw a lot of tweets that were out there. The Flyers. So I put the Flyers game. Man, that was terrible. For a Zamboner like me, I'm ready to get in. I'm ready to watch. I'm like, all right, let's go. I put it on. The kids are watching. It was a terrible first period. I probably watched for half the first period and turned it off.
It was a boring game, and as K-Red brings up, they did just come cross-country from their long West Coast trip. They probably were a little bit gassed. It wasn't a particularly enjoyable hockey game for the most part, but they'll regroup and get back at it tomorrow against the Washington Capitals. One final game Sunday Night Football, in case you fell asleep before the game was over. Are the Steelers good? Do the Jets suck? Is the answer to both of those questions yes? The Steelers win 37-15 over the New York Jets. Steelers improved to 5-2. Russell Wilson gets the start for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this one. Back off injury, 16 of 29 for 264 and a pair of scores. Aaron Rodgers threw a pair of interceptions. Breece Hall was pretty much the lifeblood of the Jets offense last night. Yep. And the Jets lose by 22, and they fall to 2-5 in the first Davante Adams game. Davante Adams now, by the way, loses to the Pittsburgh Steelers twice in 7 daes with two different teams.
Tough to do. I have an acquaintance that's a Steeler fan. That is he's in our fantasy football league, Jately, and he is always even with Kenny Pickett as a starter. Look out, Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl. Look at this defense, and it's like, bro, you're not winning the Super Bowl with Kenny Pickett. I don't care how good your defense is. This isn't the '80s, bro. Not happening. So he was chirping last night early about Russell Wilson, and I'm like, you're not winning anything unless you have better quarterback play. That's what wins in the NFL. Russell Wilson looked pretty good last night. I'll be curious to see what he looks like in upcoming games. Tomlin was taking a lot of criticism for benching Justin Fields.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting decision. Was Fields great? No, he wasn't great. He was good, and they were 4-2. It's odd, and I know the phrase is like you don't lose your job because of injury.
Yeah, you do sometimes.
I think that is reserved for quarterbacks who are like steadfastly the starting quarterback of the team. Like if Jalen Hurts were to get injured and Kenny Pickett has a run of 2 games where he plays well, Jalen Hurts comes back, Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback again. Justin Fields wasn't like, or Russell Wilson wasn't like he was like the de facto starter because he's Russell Wilson and they acquired him.
He's been terrible in recent years.
Right, and he wasn't very good in his years with Denver. You know, I always go back to Bledsoe and Brady conversation, and that kind of skews the thought process a little bit. But I was surprised that he turned to Russell Wilson. Wilson played well last night.
Yeah, Justin Fields didn't do enough to take the job. If Justin Fields would have played better, and he even said it would be his job. I don't think he didn't play great. He was fine. But yeah, he and the Jets are done. That's like Aaron Rodgers is picking his nose and eating it on the sideline in the fourth quarter.
I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up retiring at the end of the year.
I don't disagree. Yeah,
this team
stinks. Over. It's over, and he knows it.
And then so they stink now, right? If they're bad now, you're gonna have to draft a quarterback, right? You don't have anybody waiting in the wings.
That is a disaster. All right, we'll get to the Saquon Giants part of things coming up here in a second. Let's talk about CJAM Construction. So we first talked about CJAM on Friday. Family-owned home remodeler specializing in decks, bathrooms, and flooring. And then Mark, the owner, reached out to me, sent me an email, and was like, "Hey, I'm Mark. I've been a long-time listener." He's a John Marks and Sean Brace listener from back when we did weekends. So he's been listening for a long time. So I appreciate him reaching out. But he was telling me about the business, telling me about what they do. Their goal is to help their clients alleviate the challenges and frustrations that come with home remodeling. So check it out. if you're looking for new deck, you're looking to get the bathrooms redone, flooring in your house. Right now, they have an amazing spooky season sale. It's till the 31st, till Halloween, on CoreLogic luxury vinyl plank flooring. Price is starting at $249 per square foot. That's savings up to 35% off of retail. Taxes and fees are extra. CoreLogic flooring, 100% waterproof, formaldehyde free, featuring an elegant natural wood look and feel. Honestly, I got hardwoods, all hardwood. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would get the CoreLogic because there's not really much of a difference, and the cost it's a really, really good value. So the wear layer, it's 12 to 20 mil, and what that means is the protection against scratches and scuffs is amazing. So if you have kids, dogs, if your floor takes a pounding, this is a really, really good choice. It's a 5 millimeter plank thickness. This is all you need. So check them out. Again, C-Jam Construction, family-owned home remodeler. And if you mention PHLY, when you call them, 856-329-2933, 856-329-2933, ask them about your next home project. Bathrooms, decks, flooring. You can see their full selection of luxury vinyl plank and everything that they have. It's C-Jam. It's the letter C, J-A-M construction.com is their website. CJamconstruction.com/flooring takes everything with the flooring. But C-Jam Construction, and shout out to Mark out there for being a longtime listener. First-time advertiser. He's a partner here on Philly with John Marks. All right, so check it out. Glatt Hair Restoration. I have a little video that Tyler's going to run here for Glatt. So I was, as I mentioned, I was over at the office last Wednesday, and I was having something done called the TED treatment. TED uses ultrasound waves and electrostimulation to increase blood flow and stimulate hair follicles. It helps with hair loss, thinning, shedding, and other conditions. What it's doing is strengthening the hair follicle, and the results are amazing. I have it done every year, especially back here. It really helps with the crown of your head. It helps with shedding. It helps kind of get the follicles going. It's completely painless. It's non-invasive, so there's no needles. And again, that's TED. Glatt Hair Restoration by Morgenstern Medical is where you want to go. So if you're looking for hair restoration, I had a hair restoration procedure with Glatt Hair Restoration. But that's not the only thing they do. So you call them. You schedule a free one-on-one consultation. They're going to pinpoint the best course of treatment. Maybe it's hair restoration. Maybe they're going to say, okay, let's do that. Maybe it's the TED treatment. Vitamin supplementation. I know a lot of women and men like to do this for shedding when you're starting to go thin, right? PRP, stem cell restoration, and a lot more. Glatt Hair is not just about restoration. It's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments really dramatically change lives because bald is now optional. Change your hair, change your life. Do it with Glatt Hair Restoration by Morgenstern Medical. Best in the business, most experience, and most success when it comes to hair. 610-980-4000. 610-980-4000. Operators are standing by, as they used to say. You could speak to the hair team right now. Everybody over there has over 30 years of experience in hair restoration. That's all they do, hair. And I've known them for well over 10 years now. Glatt Hair, G-L-A-T Hair, MCTR.com. Glatt Hair, MCTR.com for the website. Well, there you go. All right. So I knew that Giants fans were, especially right after that Saquon signed with the Eagles, it would have burned me too. It would have hurt. I don't know where I would have directed my anger towards. I think it's easy to direct it towards the player, especially initially, right? But then once you calm down, and by the way, if Saquon goes to the Chargers or the Texans or the Raiders or some other team, I don't think Giants fans really care all that much. I think they wave him goodbye and say, hey, like, all right, Saquon, thank you very much for everything. We understand. But Saquon Barkley leaving the Giants to go to the Eagles really was salt in the wounds for a lot of Giants fans. So that's where I think it kind of starts and ends with it, because none of it actually makes sense. He wanted to be a Giant. He wanted to re-sign long-term. Sure, he had injury problems and things like that. He was also their best offensive weapon for his entire career, and he didn't get a whole lot of help. His offensive line wasn't good. His quarterback wasn't good. His wide receivers weren't good. He was not given a good football team. He's a running back. He's not a quarterback. There's only so much a running back can do. Eric Dickerson's one of the best running backs in the history of the league. Didn't do a whole lot. Barry Sanders, one of the best running backs in the history of the league. Didn't do a whole lot when it came to winning. Right? Quarterbacks, offensive line, defense, wide receivers. You need a true team, right? So blaming Saquon Barkley for the Giants not winning would be crazy to do. And I don't think any Giant fan would do that. But yesterday they were burning his jersey outside of the stadium, as they were initially after he signed with the Eagles. They were booing him pretty heartily inside the stadium. I was trying to come up with a comp if we were in Philadelphia. And Tyler, maybe you can help me out with this. Because the only jersey I can remember burning was T.O.'s jersey. And I'm not talking about me personally. But when T.O. returned to Philadelphia, his jersey was burned in the parking lot by Eagles fans.
I think because the comp is weird, because you're talking about a guy who was unfortunately injured quite a bit, went to a rival, played really well when he was healthy, but did have a rash of injuries, went to a division rival. If fans feel spurned by it, that's their right, I guess. The burning jersey thing is crazy to me regardless, because you paid for that jersey. You spent your money on that jersey. I guess the comp probably would be like, does Ben Simmons hold up? But Ben Simmons kind of gave up. You know what I mean?
I actually feel, money aside, I feel bad for Ben Simmons. He's totally mentally cooked. Ben Simmons is done.
So I don't know if there's I can't recall a situation like this. I've seen it happen in a lot of places, but I can't recall the videos going around of Philadelphia fans doing this specifically.
Let me give you. I'll try to give you a comp, and the Eagles fans acted much differently. Let's go through a couple of ex-Philadelphia players that came back and received hard treatment. Scott Rowland was booed very loudly and very uncomfortably. I hated that whole situation. He also turned down a long-term big money offer from the Phillies. The Phillies wanted to keep him. The Giants didn't want to keep Saquon Barkley. They could have signed him early. If you watched Hard Knocks, and I didn't, but I saw the same clip everybody else did, they didn't want it. The general manager didn't want to keep Saquon Barkley. He didn't feel like, to the team that they had, keeping a running back, an often injured running back, made a lot of sense. And you know what? I didn't think the Giants not wanting to re-sign Saquon Barkley at that point long-term really wasn't that crazy to me. They're not contending for a Super Bowl. Are they going to be in a Super Bowl in 3 years? It always helps to have great talent like Saquon Barkley on your team. I didn't even think it was that crazy for them to say, you know what, probably makes more sense if we don't re-sign him. The problem is he went to the Eagles.
Yeah, I think that I've long played under the pretense, and my buddy, you probably know him too, our buddy Joe Torti, kind of got me hooked on this idea of, unless they are elite level running backs, maybe Saquon Barkley was and is, I think that it's such a volatile position. The turnover rate is so high. The shelf life of a running back's apex of his career is so short.
And it goes quick.
Paying a running back a big-time contract sometimes more times than not, probably backfires on you. You've seen the list of leading rushers for Super Bowl champs in the last 15 years, and it's journeymen, it's young guys. One year it was Percy Harvin for the Seahawks.
You can go year to year with running backs and be fine.
So I think that there is validity to okay, we're not ready to compete. We're not going to dish out a percentage of our salary cap to a running back who is now, 28, 27, 28 years old, whatever he is.
Year. Yep.
He's been in the league for a while. I get that thought process, and I understand that you want to kind of be able to use your cap in a way that, is constructive for a reconstructing team. I also think there's merit to maybe the smartest person in the room on those Hard Knock videos was Joe Shane's son telling him to draft Jaden Daniels. So
they believe me, they wanted to.
I think that there's levels to it, of course, but I don't disagree that allowing a $13 million running back to walk when you need to. You have offensive line needs, you have skill position needs, you probably have a quarterback need. you gotta allocate your resources elsewhere. I get that portion of it.
Yep. Yeah. So like, I don't even think that believe me, he looks bad right now. And John Mara, the owner, said that like he was like, this is worst case scenario. It's worst case scenario for the Giants. It really is, because that franchise does not. And even though they're skill guys, I like some of their young skill guys for sure. Still, but so I'm gonna give you my comp. And I was really like, all right, well, like Roland doesn't make sense because the Phillies actually tried to sign him, and we crushed him when he came back.
And the thing with Roland, too, is, yes, the Phillies wanted Roland back, but the Phillies were not very set on putting other good players around.
Well, they weren't
Scott
a great
Rowland.
organization.
They had Jimmy Rollins coming up. Bobby Abreu was there. Who else?
He didn't want to be here. No, I mean,
quite frankly, I can't blame the guy.
But like, we could go back and relitigate whether or not Roland was correct or not. But like, Saquon Barkley wanted to be a Giant, and the Giants had many opportunities. They freaking franchised him, right? Like, it was a contentious contract thing that was going on, and it was he said, she said. There was numbers being leaked in the media of what he turned down, and Saquon made it very clear that that was not accurate, that it was misleading, the information that was put out there. So I honestly have to go back to Reggie White, and I'm sure I'm missing some in there. Reggie White, now what, 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, he wanted to remain an Eagle. Norman Brayman, the owner of the Eagles, it was the start of free agency in the NFL. He wasn't going to pay him. So Reggie White went to Green Bay and ended up winning a Super Bowl. My cousin Matt, who now lives in Tennessee, actually sent me a picture yesterday. He hold on, I got to bring it up real fast. He sent it to me. He says it was the sign of Reggie White Boulevard, University of Tennessee, All-American, NFL Pro Bowler, member of the 1997 Super Bowl champion Green Bay Packers. Doesn't mention the Eagles. And why would it? Right? And it burns me because Reggie and I share the same birthday. Reggie was easily one of my favorite players ever in Philadelphia. He was one of the best players to ever play in the city, one of the best NFL defensive players ever. And he'll be remembered as a Packer before an Eagle, even though he spent his most productive years in Philadelphia. So he wanted to stay. The Eagles didn't want him. They let him go. I'm trying to think if there was one Eagle fan that booed Reggie White when he came back, or that would have booed Reggie White when he came back. He wanted to stay. The team didn't want him, so he left. Saquon Barkley wanted to stay. The team didn't want him, so he left. Boo your organization, Giants fans. It's a really, really weird thing with the Giants. And I think it also goes to just how much Giants fans can hate Eagles fans because Eagles fans hate Giants fans, and I do as well. But they almost have this weird ex-girlfriend type behavior about them, Giants fans. They have the Super Bowls, but they also know that we have their lunch. And we're a better organization, and they suck. And that's a bad organization. But their behavior was really, really weird with this whole Saquon thing. Literally, he wanted to be a Giant, and the Giants wouldn't sign him, and they're booing him and burning his jersey. Make it make sense. He was a great player. He had injuries and things like that. He handled himself as a professional. Again, he wanted to be a Giant. And the obsession over the Philadelphia Eagles as Giants fans is what made this happen. That's the only thing I can think. Has everything to do with the Eagles. And that's it. So, Saquon, boom. I don't even know. Like, who else has left Philadelphia that we've had this weird thing with where it was I'll give you a name. Jason Worth. We were totally out of line with Jason Worth. It just came to mind. Phillies fans were out of line with Jason Worth. Jason Worth wanted to resign here.
So I was, what year did he leave? 2011 he left?
Sounds right.
I was like 17. I had like this Philly versus the world mentality as a sports fan. I hated Jason Worth when he left. And now as an adult, I look back and I go, yeah, I get it. He got it. He got paid. He got a big time deal from the Nationals. I can't blame him for taking that. I understand what it's like as an adult now to make adult money. It's a business. This is, just like anything that we operate in, right? If somebody in Washington calls and says, "Hey, I'll triple your salary," well, I love working with you, John, but I'm gone.
It was
You
an
know what
offer
I
he
mean?
couldn't say no to.
Right, exactly.
Just
so,
plain and simple.
I think that there's levels to it as you understand like the depth of humanity and like what it's like to be an adult and work in a business. And I think that we were definitively harsh on Worth for going and taking a big time contract.
Yep. Yeah, and I was actually down in the game in Washington where he broke his thumb and Phillies fans were cheering him. So I saw, no, there was hate and vitriol for Jason Worth, and I never understood it. I was always a huge Jason Worth fan. He was kind of a jerk his final year in Philly, and I remember that. Like, there was one thing where he, like, a kid caught a foul ball in the stands, and Worth didn't get it, and he yelled at the kid or something like that. But, yeah, it was always it was that I never understood the Jason Worth thing because he wanted to stay here. Phillies couldn't afford to pay everybody. I think the best offer they made Worth was 3 for $45, and he signed for $127. It's like, all right, like, Jason, we love you. You won a championship here. Boom. Now, like, things are cool now. He's come back, and everybody seems right. But, like, that was a Saquon Barkley type reaction with Jason Worth. Didn't understand it at all. Thought it was very silly. All right, we'll get back to it, but listen, let's talk about BetParks for a second. I was on the BetParks app this morning. Eagles. They're 2.5-point underdogs at Cincinnati. It's a 1 o'clock game on Sunday. Bengals minus 2.5. Now, I would expect that this line will go down maybe to Bengals minus 1.5 or Bengals minus 1 by the time kickoff happens on Sunday. So if you like the Eagles, if you like the Eagles and you know you're going to like the Eagles or you always bet the Eagles, get it with some points. I wouldn't wait. I would get it right now. I would get Eagles plus 2.5 if you like this game. Because this, like I said, I think this goes the other direction by the time kickoff happens. Maybe it's even a pick 'em or Eagles plus 1. So get the Eagles right now. The one and only sportsbook app I would ever recommend, BetParks, and the BetParks Sportsbook app and online casino. And right now, new users that download the BetParks online casino app and sportsbook, right now up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. So you go down in the first 24 hours, boom, up to $1,000 bonus back. There's always another way to win on the BetParks online casino and sportsbook app. BetParks.com for all the details. Your casino bonus must be wagered, and you must be 21 in New Jersey, PA, Ohio, or Michigan. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's talk about TrueMark for a second. If you're in the housing market, maybe you're a first-time home buyer or you want to get back in for an investment property. Right now, TrueMark Financial's mortgage specialists can offer you guidance on loan options and terms. They'll help you assess your finances and credit score to determine borrowing capacity. Right now, they're starting to go quick. When those houses, at least in my neighborhood, bam, they go up, they go down pretty quick. So get with TrueMark right now. Save for a down payment and budget for closing costs. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA as an equal opportunity lender. For more info, visit TrueMark.com/PHLYITY. TrueMark.com/PHYITY. There you go. All right. So Saquon, can we actually play? We had Saquon. So Saquon after the game. And first of all, the fact he's a Penn Stater is kind of, it's a half a strike against him. Sorry, Tyler, but
it is what it is.
I always, I always liked Saquon. You could always tell what an electric talent he was, and he always handled himself like a pro. I always liked him. And he was a Giant, and it's like, all right, whatever. He's a Giant. But here's Saquon after the game. He's being asked about the burning of the jerseys in the parking lot and everything else. Here he is.
I was surprised by the vitriol. I mean, the burning your jersey in the parking lot.
That was crazy. That was crazy. I mean, I've seen my jersey get burned before over on social media, but the timing of it, like, I'm locked in. I'm listening to my music, and I see, like, the fans, and all I see is fans just pointing, and I look, I'm like, what are they pointing at? And I see smoke, and I'm just like, my jersey getting burned. So, yeah, that was definitely different. I don't know if I ever experienced anything like that in my life, and, hopefully I don't experience that again. But in that moment, I was ready for 3rd and 1. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he was ready for 3rd and 1, where he could just plow over some.
Yeah, that was a really polite way to say he's going to run through somebody's chest.
And he did, man. Woo! He's a lot of fun to watch. He at one point during the post-game press conference, and you can see it right there, there's relief. There wasn't F the Giants, F the GM, F the ownership. It was, I'm just glad I don't have to do this again. Because he'll come back and it'll always be a story in New York. But that first time coming back, it's a tough week. It's a tough week for anybody, especially a guy that was getting his jersey burned. And he knew that going to the Eagles was going to have a certain reaction. He knew it. And did part of him wanting to go to the Eagles so he could kind of give it to the Giants a little bit? Sure. I think anybody would feel like that. I would as well. But man, he handled himself like a pro. And he's just relieved to have it over. And the Eagles have a really, really good running back. They certainly do. All right, so the question I have, we'll go around the league a little bit, is the question I have with this way to win football games. So you have the Bengals, who, by the way, really haven't been very good this year. You still have Joe Burrow. You have some talent on offense. They're hardly a juggernaut when it comes to scoring points. In fact, they're struggling. Really, but they got the win yesterday against the Browns, who are one of the worst teams in football. They scored 21 points. So, like, I don't know if you can look at the Bengals as being like, oh man, the Bengals team that we saw go to the Super Bowl. They're 3-4. They've lost to the Patriots, they've lost to the Chiefs, they've lost to the Commanders, and they've lost to the Ravens. So they've faced some really tough teams on their schedule, and they've put up some offensive numbers. But they beat the Giants 17 points, and they beat the Browns this week. Is this something that can work for the Eagles? Which is, and you can't grind up Saquon Barkley with a ton of carries every week. He didn't need a ton of carries this past week. He only had 17. But is this the template? Is this something the Eagles are going to say, you know what? Like, this is how we win. We don't need Jalen throwing the ball 40 times. We don't need to have this high-profile, prolific passing game, even though we have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Because when you look at the Eagles' schedule coming up, and they have the Bengals, they're home against the Jags, and then they're at the Cowboys. So the Jags beat the Patriots yesterday, but still, that's a Sunday Night Football game at home. So I would think that, you know, like I'm entering this Sunday's game as the Eagles better beat the Bengals. I expect the Eagles to beat the Bengals. The defense has looked really good. Their offense. I'm wondering if this is the point of the season where it clicked. And it's like, Tyler, this is what we can do. Obviously, it's not going to work every week with running the football, but if they're going to stack the box against us with Saquon Barkley, we're going to nail him. We're going to hit down the field. So is this the pivot point for the offense to where this was the get-right game for this team?
Well, I think it can be, and I think you take it with consideration that the Giants have a good defense. They've been much better. Their pass rush is better. Dexter Lawrence was coming back from injury, so maybe not 100%. And obviously the Eagles did a good job of scheming without Jordan Mailata. Fred Johnson comes in. They did a good job post Mekhi Becton injury where Tyler Steen stepped in. We talked about it prior to the Browns game, and I asked you, is it feasible for this team to be 5-3 after the Jacksonville game? And I think we both agreed that it was, to go 3-1 over that stretch. Well, you're 2-0. You've won the first two. Now you have an opportunity. If you split the next two, you get to 5-3. And you got where you want to be. Now you get a little bit greedy because you won the first two games, and you say, can you win all four before you have to go to Dallas to play the Cowboys? And you're 6-2, and we're probably back to conversations of they're good and they have some deficiencies, but they're playing through those deficiencies. They're learning as they go. Whereas last year, it just felt like they were banging their head against the wall and getting away with things. If they're growing and developing as a team, and they're understanding what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. And their strengths are give the ball to Saquon Barkley, get the ball to A.J. Brown, don't hold on to the football too long. Jalen Hurts had a couple of moments yesterday where he was just holding on to the ball too long. But the throw to A.J. Brown on fourth down was a very, very good throw. He threw a couple of good back shoulder balls to him as well. Saquon Barkley, we talked about, we laid out how big of a threat he is. And you're right, you can't just give him the ball 25 times every game and say go until the wheels fall off. But I think in a sample size of a game or a 3-game stretch, in any particular portion of the season, this is a viable way to win games and to do it fairly efficiently, the way that they did it against the Giants. Like yesterday was the most complete game they had played in
It's last year.
Over a season's worth of games, right? Like, I'm trying to think back to last year if there was a game where they just like flatlined a team.
And they did yesterday, man. The Giants had no chance. They gave up early.
Yeah.
But Eagles 2023.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if there was a game that was like, yep, this was it. This was the game.
Yesterday was obviously everybody wants to see it against.
You know what? Actually, probably what it was, and it's funny that it feels this way. It was the Dolphins game, the Monday Night Football game against the Dolphins, or the Sunday Night Football game against the Dolphins. They won 31-17, and it probably didn't feel like it was that close.
It was not. No, I agree.
So we're talking about almost a full calendar year between games in which you go, yep, I feel good. You put your hands on your head, you kick the feet up, you relax. I was doing some work in the second half because I knew they were good. I haven't felt that way in a while. This was a really complete win.
Yeah. Yep. Not going to get easy. They got a tough stretch coming up here. You have the Jags, and then you have at the Cowboys, and then the Commanders. We'll see what's up with Daniels.
They've been great, man. And I know, they throttled a really bad Carolina team last night.
They did with Mariota in for most of the game.
They did what they needed to do.
Yeah. Killed my fantasy team with Daniels going out. Killed me. Anyway. Yeah. So you have that. I'm actually watching Jimmy Kempski put it up there, and I saw a bunch of people were tweeting it out yesterday. But how about the secret to the Eagles offense? Linebacker Ben Van Sumeren in there, freeing up some big blocks, freeing up Saquon and Kenny Gainwell. So yeah, all right, there you go.
Yeah, I thought Gainwell was efficient yesterday too.
He was good. Yep.
Because there's a lot of people, myself included, who go, oh, Saquon just ripped off a big run, and Kenny Gainwell's in the game.
Right, don't take him out.
But he picked up 4.3 yards a carry, ran the ball 13 times. He got almost 60 yards. I thought he was efficient yesterday. He was, he had one catch out of the backfield. I think that for what they needed him to be, I think he did a pretty good job at it yesterday.
Yeah, he needs to be productive when Saquon goes out. We don't need a lot from him. Not a lot of snaps. I don't need to be thinking of starting him in fantasy football or anything like that. Just come in and be a little bit productive. All right, well, there you go. Cowboys have a bye this week, so we don't get to make fun of them. Commanders continue to roll. It was not a great 4:25 dish or 4 o'clock dish on the red zone yesterday. You got to watch the Chiefs and the 49ers. Brock Purdy had three interceptions yesterday. That was not a clean game. San Francisco does not look good this year. It is so hard, even if you don't win the Super Bowl. It is so hard to go year to year, every year, kind of be that team that's right there. Ayuk looks like he has a torn ACL, so he's gone. McCaffrey, guy, who knows when he's coming back? McCaffrey. 49ers fall to 3-4 on the season. And the Chiefs, dude, they just keep rolling, man.
Yesterday, the second leading receiver for the 49ers after George Kittle was Jacob Cowing. Now, you and I watch a lot of college football, but I will give you $10 if you can tell me where Jacob Cowing went to school without Googling it.
Appalachian State.
He was a UTEP player. He was their second leading receiver yesterday, so he had 2 for 50. And then it was kind of a who's who of guys, because like you said, Ayuk got hurt. Debo tries to play through the illness. He doesn't he doesn't make it very far. But the one thing that was crazy, John, between Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes, they combined for 370-ish yards on the day. The two of them were 0 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Wow. It's not a very good quarterback day. But you're right. The Chiefs continue to win. Their defense is legit. They ran the ball effectively. Kareem Hunt scored twice. They just find ways to win. They're just a really good football team who continues to find ways to win. Yeah, and Andy Reid is just the greatest coach in the history of the world off of the bye.
It's unbelievable.
He is 22-4 in his NFL career off the bye.
Something we talked about when he was here. Going into the bye, not so good. Coming out of the bye, amazing. Kareem Hunt, they don't even care if he's averaging less than 4 yards a carry. I think he was 3.6 yesterday or something like that. He's just chewing up those yards, getting the goal line carries. God, I wish I would have picked him up in fantasy football. Anyway, the Detroit and Minnesota game was a tremendous game. Minnesota came out quick. Detroit answered quickly, and it was like, all right, Is Detroit going to blow them out? Nope. Minnesota kept coming back, took the lead. Detroit needs a late field goal to win it. But two really good teams. I would say the two best teams in the conference right now are in the NFC North.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think it's those two, and then is it crazy? And then probably the Packers and Washington, right? Yeah, just two really good teams. It felt like two really good boxers just trading body blows. Like you said, Minnesota jumps out early. The Lions come back. They take an 11-point lead. I think they blew two 11-point leads in this game. They kicked the game-winning field goal at the very end. It was a really, you're watching it kind of like via the eyes of Red Zone and on secondary streams.
Right.
But you catch the last 3 minutes after the Eagles are over, and the Lions go down the field. They get kicked a field goal, and then they get the Vikings get the illegal formation penalty that doesn't draw a 5-second runoff, but other penalties would have drawn a 10-second runoff. It was an interesting dynamic of how it happened. And then Sam Darnold, for some inexplicable reason, throws the ball over the middle of the field and gets nothing out of it.
Right. Sam Darnold.
Interesting. But yes, you're probably right. Two of the best teams in the NFC right now.
So we get the double Monday Night Football game tonight, which they're still doing at this point in the season. This must be a first. So you get
I don't know why they do this.
So check it out. Baltimore and Tampa Bay is on ABC and ESPN. That's 8:15. The Chargers-Cardinals game exclusively on ESPN Plus. So that won't even be you won't even be able to flip back and forth.
Weird.
So it's a way for them to get their streaming. I have ESPN Plus because I have the bundle. So I have Disney, ESPN Plus. What else is on that? Hulu or whatever. So if I want to watch it, I'll have it. I probably won't. If I'm watching anything, it'll be Baltimore, Tampa Bay. That's actually going to be a pretty good game. It'll be a really physical game.
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay probably has a claim to being one of the better teams in the NFC this year too.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Now I think Baltimore probably wins tonight, but it's a good Tampa Bay team still.
Yeah. No, they beat the Eagles. Beat up on the Eagles. Green Bay, Houston, that was an excellent game. I know you had that. You just missed that. You got beat with the hook on that
I lost 2 games this week by a total of 1.5 points. The Packers were -3. They won by 2. And the Rams were -5.5, and they won by 5. Man. Vegas knows sometimes. Sometimes you can get ahead of them a little bit, but they were pretty spot on this weekend.
When you get hooked like that, you're like, yeah, they know. Buffalo also with not that you were expecting anything from Tennessee, but Mason Rudolph comes in and you're like, all right, well, maybe they don't have a shot. And I think they were up 10-0.
Yeah, I think they were definitely up 10-7.
And it was, and then the Buffalo just went nuts in the second half, 27 points. So you have that. And I watched it seemed like you watched a lot of college football as well over the weekend.
Oh, a ton.
I watched from early games to late games. I was watching NFL yesterday. I don't know if you noticed, there's an election coming up here in the next couple weeks. I mean, Jesus Christ, how many billions of dollars of money has been spent just on Saturday and Sunday? I mean, I know we're a battleground state in Pennsylvania, but wow, man. Like every ad was a political ad.
Yeah, for the most part, that's kind of where we're at this time of year. It's mostly political ads. I will say, because I know you and I both watched a lot of college football this weekend. How about one team now there's a couple of teams that have surprised me. One team in particular that just is blowing the doors off of teams. Is Indiana really this good?
Uncle Jamie lost that one.
They have been unbelievable.
46-7 over Nebraska.
And Nebraska, listen, Nebraska's not like this amazing juggernaut team, but Raiola's been good.
You expect a more competitive
game.
It
wasn't even close.
And when Jamie gave the pick, I was like, all right, well, it actually is an Indiana line on it. And shout out to the diehards out there. Appreciate you, diehards. Shout out to you. That was like Indiana, like you'd mentioned. When you get a game like that, even though Nebraska, you're not getting the number 1 team in the nation coming in. That game's a big deal for the student body, for the players, for the university itself. That's, hey, we're undefeated and we're for real. And they blew the doors off them. Good game.
Yeah, a really, really good game. Now we live in a bizarro 2024 world where the Indiana Hoosiers are higher ranked than Alabama.
There you go.
And both military, 2 of the 3 military academies in the FCS, the FBS are ranked.
Unbelievable. And Navy is a friggin' juggernaut. I know Army is as well, but I was catching some of the Navy game early. And then I got what I wanted. Arch Manning came in the first half because Texas was getting absolutely crushed, but he wasn't able to change anything. So Ewers came back out in the second half. Georgia with a really dominating performance. And keep this in mind. I don't know if it works at the pro level, but if you're a college football fan, if there's a play that you don't like, but that is called by the refs or something that happens in a game and you don't like the call, just throw trash on the field and they'll reverse the call.
Oh, is that how that works?
That's how it worked now it ended up being the wrong call and they reversed it, but they reversed the call not on replay. They reversed it after trash.
Yeah, what a sequence of events, man.
Never seen anything like that. Georgia dominated Texas. So Uncle Jamie got that one right.
Georgia jumps back up to number 2 in the polls, by the way.
Yep, Oregon is your number 1 team. All right, everybody, we are back tomorrow at 8 a.m. live. We appreciate everybody in the chat that watches live every morning on YouTube. So shout out to you. We'll talk to you tomorrow. You can always view Philly with John Marks on YouTube at your convenience. Subscribe, like, boom, hit that subscribe button, like it, comment. Let us know how you're doing, what we're talking about here. And watch at your convenience. And also the audio version, the podcast version, audio only, posted. Just search it wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a nice 5-star review saying how great we are, and that helps us reach other people. So we appreciate it. Until Tuesday at 8 a.m., have a great day. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.